Welcome, I'm Kinetic Symphony. This is Dave. I hunt down and report on weird and true mysterious stories, from glitches to the supernatural. Case file number 1918, written by TeaPartyAsian. Royal Albert Hall's Eldritch Scroll on a roll. I'm a choir lad whose choir is fortunate enough to be invited to the Royal Albert Hall a few times each year. Usually our dressing room is in the equivalent of the basement. Not as fabulous as some of the big shots, but most of the time the boys invited are younger than 16, so they're always worried we'll break something. Very close to our dressing room is something called the Artist Bar. As the name suggests, it's a bar for performers, and drinks and snacks are sold at an extremely discounted price. As an example, if I were to go upstairs to one of the public cafes or bars found around the building, I could be charged around £4 for a sausage roll, whereas I could get the same thing at the Artist Bar for £1. As I'm over the age of 18, I'm allowed to head to the Artist Bar if I want to buy some food. We're regarded as responsible enough to not blow anything up or get trapped in the tuba or other acts of stupidity. They're quite capable of a well-brewed cup of tea. Still don't know what brand they use, so I like to head down to make sure I don't decide to take a snooze on stage. Something one of our tenors did a few years back during an actual performance. The show was to start at 1 p.m. and we'd arrive early. It was 10:30 a.m., so we'd had plenty of time, because for some reason everyone tended to like being last minute. Nobody around was really dressed, and likely wouldn't be until about 5 minutes until we were expected to be on. So I was wandering around in a shirt and jeans. I was caffeine deprived, so I decided to go get a cup of tea. All the other chaps are in the dressing room, being watched by the chaperones, so it's just me heading up to the Artist Bar. I remember it being frightfully quiet in the hall, which wasn't unexpected, but was sort of chilly, which for some reason made me feel a little tense. I turned into the room and noticed a selection of people who were obviously older than myself, wearing formal attire. It was of very brief interest to me, because caffeine triumphed over anything interesting in my surroundings. I remember thinking that I felt like I was walking into the Overlook Hotel. I expected to be greeted by Jack Torrance at any moment. I also remember one gentleman wearing a tuxedo with a white bow tie, which was sort of weird because the orchestra commonly just wears plain black, and the other choirs were doing the same. The gentleman was wearing what our conductor would be, but he wasn't the conductor. I shrugged and got to the counter, and there were two girls there. What weirded me out more was the way they were sitting. There are 2 or so chairs usually on the left side of the bar, so whoever is on shift at the time doesn't need to stand infinitely. They're stationed at the left wall, so the servers aren't faced towards me, but I can see their faces. If I was a server, my customer would be forward, then right. Both girls are sitting back against chairs, legs on the floor, and their hands placed perfectly forward on both legs. There's a small smile on both their faces, but they're looking straight forward, not at me, but at the opposite wall. They look sort of like dolls, and they're sitting in silence until I snap out of my bemusement and cough a little. Excuse me? One of the girls stands up. The way she moves is honestly ridiculously robotic. It's another thing that's a little disconcerting, because she first stands, walks forward, still smiling, then suddenly turns at a 90-degree angle to face me in silence. Hi there, I was just hoping to get some tea? Her smile widens, but when she speaks, it's monotone. I lean back slightly in shock. Of course, sir, that will be £1. I hand her the coin, and as she turns to make the drink, I realize how quiet the room is. I look around and turn to see that the people from earlier are just looking at each other. No talking, just sort of staring. Okay then. My drink is put in front of me. It's not exactly difficult to pour boiling water into a tea bag, so it really didn't take long. I thank the girl, who is now just staring at me, walk over to the counter, lid off, pour a little milk in, lid on, and because I feel so uncomfortable, I try to power walk out. I get out of the room and I'm about to turn back down the hallway to the dressing room when I take a sip, and my brain just goes, bloody hell, this needs sweetness. I'm about maybe 5 meters from the artist bar, facing away. Because the atmosphere felt so weird, I had a very brief debate with myself about going back. The hallway is silent. I would hear if people were walking down the hall. So when I finally decide, bugger it, I'll grab some sugar and leave. At best, a 15-second argument with my inner monologue. You can imagine my shock when I turn, walk up to the doorway, and the room is dark as hell because the lights are off. I poke my head in further and turn my phone flashlight on. Nobody at the counter, nobody at the tables. The room was bloody empty, and I heard nobody leave. There was no sign of anything. Unnerved beyond all else, I book it. Somewhat gently. I'm not going to spill this drink no matter how spooked I may be. Back to my room. As I walk in, I'm given a strange look by a chaperone. Where'd you get the drink from? Did you go up to the cafe? I'm confused. No, I just headed to the artist bar. Cue her confusion. The artist bar isn't open until 12 today. The saddest bit was I didn't get to finish my drink because we were called up for rehearsal. And cold tea is just forbidden. I've never had anything similar happen with the artist bar. When I described the courier girls to one of the organizers at the event, I was given a weird look and told nobody of that appearance was employed at the Albert Hall. Gesotts from 1918. Royal Albert Hall's Eldritch Scroll on a roll. That sounds like a very cool place to rehearse and perform at, so props to all you guys. I'm sure you deserve it. Was it a reenactment from a bunch of spirits? You're talking about a play, performance. If people had died there, maybe they just wanted to reenact a skit, a phenomenon for a person, a real audience member. There's something very wholesome about that, although it really stretches the extent of what spirits are able to do, to actually serve you a physical drink. Yeah, spirits, if they're manifested, they can interact with the material world. They don't just phase through things. And that makes sense too, because there's always the question in sci-fi or fantasy where if you have a ghost or someone that's out of phase, but they're on a planet or on a ship, why don't they just fall right through the ship? They can phase through walls, but why not the floor or the crust of the earth? If a ghost just phases through and isn't pushed back by the electromagnetic forces of any given matter, well, they would just fall right through to the center of the earth if they're still bound by gravity. And if they weren't, then the planet would zip away and they would just be left in empty space forever. If spirits are real, then they are bound by gravity, and at least they aren't necessarily implied to always be phasing through matter. Maybe they can, but maybe they have to will it, and so they can still keep their feet planted on the earth. This seems like a manifestation of a few spirits that were just hanging out, maybe bored, and wanted to perform. Pretty cool in that context, I think. Now time for the joke of the day. Why did the cow cross the road? To go to the movies. Like the video, subscribe, hit the bell. Kinetic Symphony signing off.